Hey there, and welcome to Ruck, Buttercup, the podcast that's all about real talk for military spouses and families. I'm Sabrina, and we're so glad you're here.
And I'm Ashley, and together we dive into the ups, the downs, and everything in between that comes with military life. From deployment tips to marriage conversations to PCS chaos, finding your identity and owning it, nothing is off limits.
And I'm Laura. Whether you're folding uniforms, packing boxes, managing the home front, solo, or just trying to make it through another long week, you're in the right place. Here on Ruck Up Buttercup, we share real stories, honest conversation, and practical support for military families.
We talk about the hard stuff, the hopeful stuff, and everything in between. Because military life is anything but one size fits all.
This is a space to feel seen, supported, and reminded that you're never alone in this journey.
So lace up those boots, lift your chin, and let's ruck up Buttercup. Military life doesn't define us. We rise in.
You can also hear us on Wreath Across America Radio on Women in Media Wednesdays at 11 p.m. See you there.
Hey everybody, welcome back to our second episode of season 6 of Ruck Up Buttercup. We are so excited to bring you one of our very first resources of the year. I'm so excited to announce our guest today. I've had the privilege of working alongside her through a couple of different programs we've done with Military Spouse Advocacy Network. So welcome to the show, Portia.
Hi, ladies. Thanks for having me.
Hey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Portia? Like, what is your role in the military community?
Well, my husband just retired after 30 years. So I am now, I guess, a retiree spouse, which is a whole different mind shift. But after 20 years of being solid soldier support, it's crazy. And we moved back from Europe towards the end of his career. So we are now stabilized in North Carolina, back at Bragg. Third time's a charm.
It's always a home to wherever. If you've been to Bragg, you always go back to Bragg.
It's a vortex for sure. And so we have 2 high schoolers that we are stabilized here to get them through high school.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love Bragg. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like Bragg, but I genuinely love Bragg.
So as a non-native American, North Carolina it's super special to me because, I lived in Wilmington for a number of years when I met my husband. He and I actually bought our houses 1 month before meeting each other. Mine was in Wilmington. His was just outside Bragg. So we did Wednesdays and weekends, 97 miles back and forth. And then I actually moved into his house when he was deployed right after we got married. So he was away and I moved in for when he got back. But yeah, North Carolina is just, there's so much here. You can hike, you can go to the ocean, you can go to the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
I mean, we talk about that so often on the podcast. Like, the general area may actually suck. Like the actual where the place is located isn't the best, but in terms of a location that is just so accessible to so many different things, Bragg is genuinely one of my favorites because you do have the mountains and the ocean. You're a short trip from, DC area. You're not that far of a trip from Florida and Georgia and all the other different locations that you can go visit. So it usually is a really great location, where some other locations it's just oh, this is a beautiful place, but then there's not a lot to do. So I always love recommending Bragg because there is so much to do. But so you were at Bragg. Now you're back at Bragg and you're in that retired state. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do. We have this, the whole podcast is all about real conversations about uplifting military spouses and remind them that they're not alone. And you do such an amazing job at doing that. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do in everyday life?
So I've always been one that sort of jumped into the communities that I've been in. I decided when it became serious that I was going to really jump into the community I was marrying into. For a while, that was driving back and forth from Wilmington to Bragg to go to SFRG meetings. So bit of a commitment, but it was pre-deployment. The tempo was pretty tight then. And so it was all hands on deck. And that started the relationship that I had with volunteering in the community and really just showing up in a way that I wanted people to show up for me. I always think back to WWSD, what would Stephanie do? And Stephanie was my husband's battalion commander's spouse at the time. And she welcomed me in before we were even married. So I became one of her go-to girls during the times of rapid and frequent deployments with 7th Group. And it was a community that I didn't know I needed, but I jumped in with both feet, and that started it for me. In different places, we've had the opportunity to really create communities around us. And I often will say to other spouses, if you can't find your community, create it. And that might just be you and 2 other women, right? 2 other parents, 2 other spouses. But if you can show up for people the way you want people to show up for you, it's a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could agree on that on so many different levels. I mean, I think that's why we have the podcast, as well as why Deployed Love is what it is today. I just had interviews with 3 new baby military spouses this week, or over the last 2 weeks. And that's the first thing they're like, I just want to jump in, like head in and find a community, because I already know that this is going to be a crazy ride. But they are like, I also want to provide that, like, comfort to other spouses. So I think that is, exactly true. You have to build a community that you want. You have to put in just as much work.
I think that community looks so much different than, like, even when Ashley and I got in, or you yourself, Portia, joined the military community, because as you were just stating, like the SFRGs used to be where you would find that. When you get to your base, you're like, oh, great, my SFRG is where we're going to connect. We're going to find where we need to be. But I even over the last 15 years have felt that disconnect of, like, oh, there's not that on the installation anymore. It may still exist. And like parts that we've been connected to through, like, say, SF, they have a pretty good SFRG through the Special Forces organizations, but it's not the same at every installation. It's so inconsistent. So I think there's really great things like with Deployed Love, and you're going to tell us a little bit about the American workers across the globe, AWAG, having these new communities, or MSAN, and all these ones that are available that are international, right? Like where you can connect and it's going to be there no matter where you move.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important, because, those FRG programs have changed so drastically throughout the years. They started off where they were in the spouse's hands, and they got into command sponsored, and then back and forth and back and forth. So there hasn't been this, like, consistency of, like, what that program is to provide. And it could be the case on, like, different case for other branches. We're actually just talking about the Army because that's what I'm familiar with. And I think that's why so many of these programs exist today, and why they are doing these community programs is because there's always been that disconnect or spouses just being like, I don't want anything to do with my actual husband's unit, like, but I still want that community aspect of other military spouses and what they're going through and what I'm going through. So I think that speaks volumes because of how many programs that are out there today. But there's just so many, and they're all same but different. So, like, there's something out there for everybody. And if there's not something for you, like Portia said, go and make it.
go create it. Yeah, for sure. So I remember when we moved back to Bragg. Gosh, it was our second time at Bragg. So I was part of a group which is now, and has been for a while, the Fort Bragg Natural Birth and Parenting Group. It's an online resource, so Facebook group. So when we started, I think there were 8 or 10 of us in a home birth midwife's office, and we all just wanted to support each other with, breastfeeding, baby wearing, cloth diapering, all the things that you kind of need, or then needed to seek out support for, because they weren't quite the norm. I mean, we called ourselves the Fayetteville Crunchy Mums Group, and then that sort of morphed into a more formal title. And now it's huge. I mean, the fact that it's still going, and parents are still gaining support from that organization. But, from small seeds come great trees. I'm sure that's not the phrase, but
I like it nonetheless.
you can grow something really strong from a small start if you're consistent and you show up well. So that was a really good opportunity for a number of us to support each other in a way that we weren't able to find elsewhere. So a good example of building the community. And none of us came from the same unit. We were all from different parts of town, different units, different backgrounds, but we had that common bond of a high tempo time. It was, 2013, 2014. So pretty high tempo. And we just, would get together and feed all the kids. in one place, or backyard birthdays, grocery drop-offs when somebody had sick kids and their spouse was gone. And it just was the community that we all needed. But you have to be willing to sort of, pay into it first.
Yeah, I think that's so funny that you said that was kind of like your first like experience with like finding a community, because that was kind of mine too. Like, I've always been involved with the FRG, but there's only like so much community that I got from that, like at that time. And when I had my son back in 2014, I joined a baby group as well. So it was a baby wearing group. I kind of went because I was, my son, love him to death, but he was like one of the clingiest babies ever, constantly wanting to be held. And I had like, okay, like how do I wear him properly? I was in Alaska. I didn't have like any mom friends that had baby worn or anything like that. And so I went to a baby wearing group. We did hikes and stuff. And that was kind of my first experience of like, wow, like this is such a profound difference in how I'm living my life, having a community, like just another mom to talk to, or just another person who's going through the same things as me. And that was kind of like when we moved away from that, I lost that. We went on a recruiting duty assignment. We were nowhere near a military installation. And the effects of not having that community was so significant. Like it was one of those things where I was like a self was like, part of myself was like ripped away, if that makes any sense to anyone listening. But it was one of those things where like, as soon as we got back to an installation, I was like, the very first thing I'm doing is finding community. And that was kind of how I found Sabrina, because I was like, I need a community. I need people. I need something to do and make sure that people don't ever feel this way. And I think, again, I feel like that's so many spouses who have created these amazing programs.
Well, I think it's funny because, Portia, before we got on, you were talking about like we bond through trauma, right? And like the some of our funniest stories are through trauma. And I agree, like, and it comes up to, especially when you are stationed away from an installation, I think that's an experience a lot of people don't talk about. And I think that's an experience that like reserves and the National Guard have. And we don't talk about it because they don't have that sense of community with their military community. They may join groups on Facebook, but it's not the same as like getting out and talking and telling your stories and like connecting.
Yeah. And, a lot of people are like, oh, but they're still at home. And like, here's the thing, y'all. You could be at home surrounded by your family, but still no one is going to understand the emotions that you are going through. And a lot of our spouses can probably attest to that. Like, they have counterparts. Like, I've had so many civilian friends in the past where, they're like, I don't understand why you're upset about this. I'm like, you don't understand like why I'm upset about this, because you've never like walked this path. And so I do think a lot of our National Guard spouses have that, where they feel they just want someone to be like, I understand what you're saying. You are not alone. The feelings you have are valid. And I think that a lot of those spouses go to those virtual communities, but they're still not getting that. And I hope that they start building those communities, because there are so many National Guard families around the country. Encourage you to make your own little groups.
I know that our recruiting families too, they go through the same thing. So when you're
hard
at a recruiting spot. So I will say that the thing I've noticed with being stationed both CONUS and OCONUS is that we do a much better job when we are away from home of investing in our communities and really being intentional about finding and creating our circle, because it's out of necessity, right? You can't run to your mom's place, or you can't go to your girlfriend's down the road, or you can't just take off for a weekend and go see your girlfriend that you were at college with. So I think it makes a big difference when you're forced to forge those relationships. You're both intentional, because nothing says, hi, let's be friends, like, can I make you my emergency contact? And I've only just met you and don't know your last name. Yeah. And, turning up at any base whilst doing that is difficult. But when you're doing it overseas, I think there's an added pressure, because you're now trying to possibly learn a culture, a language, a new environment. And for the most part, when we arrive overseas, our spouses are put to work immediately. You get to hopefully get into your house and you're not living in the lodge for a month, but your spouse, your soldier, your airman is generally going into a pretty high tempo spot, and that's it. So yeah, I think we could take a few lessons from the overseas playbook for community, but it's hard when you've got so many more options like you do when you're stateside.
Yeah, I can attest to that though. Overseas is such a different thing. And I don't know that I would have survived our first station overseas had I not had somebody who just reached out and created that community that I needed. Like she had seen that like, oh, because I was 36 weeks pregnant. I didn't know anything about Germany. And we're like, yep, here we go. And it would have been traumatizing. But luckily, there were people in that community who were like, hey, I know where the doctors are. I know how to get you to the hospital. I know how, like, let's get you going as soon as you get feet on ground so that you don't feel like you're lost by the time you're giving birth. She's like, so like that, the military spouses, especially overseas, like you were saying, grow that community so fast. Like, I think it's just that like, hey, I know how this feels and come here. Let's bring you to what we can do to get you adjusted to the situation. Because you're right. You get to the hotel and your husband's like, all right, I'll see you later this week. Basically, like, I got to do all this in processing. You don't have a car. You don't have any access to getting off of base, but good luck. We'll see you in a week. Like,
no, my dad, when the very first time we moved overseas, my dad actually immediately deployed to Kosovo. Like he was already gone by the time me and my sisters got there. Like my parents went a few weeks before us. He was already gone. And that's just kind of how life is. But I think that that's such an important thing to say is like they are forced to do that so quickly. But I feel like spouses overseas are also more willing to kind of forego that, like the option of like having options to find a friend. Where here, I feel like so many spouses stateside kind of get intimidated of meeting other military spouses just because of like what they see in the Facebook groups and things like that. And I think that's something so profound to say right now to all of you that are listening is don't let that be a barrier to you finding your community and finding someone. I mean, if you find someone and it just doesn't click, it doesn't click. We're all adults. It is what it is. But finding somebody and putting yourself out there, even if it's terrifying, because I don't know what it is. Like I'm such a people person, but sometimes meeting new people, it's terrifying. And you know, you want people to like you, and you want to have that community. You want to have those people there, and you don't want them just there to be there. Like you genuinely want someone to be in your corner. Take a moment and just put yourself out there. I mean, we see it all the time. If best case scenario, you find a lifelong partner in crime to do this life with, or you have another person that you can connect with on like a, you know, hi, it's nice to see you type of level. You're still having people that you can like, oh, this person does this. Like, let me ask them. Like you're still building your toolbox of like people that you can like, hey, I know that you have a kid who went through this. Like, can you give me some advice or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, we're all going to be like on my side of the story where someone takes you and takes care of you. Be that person for someone else though. Absolutely. Like if you see someone who is struggling with the transition, be that person and be like, hey, I can come pick you up. Hey, I can talk to you. Do you need help with this? Because why not be a resource to somebody else in your community that you're in? I mean, some of us at Bragg had been there for 10 years. Why not be that resource to somebody who's moving in and knows nothing about the area?
Well, I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves is like spouses are like, I need this. I'm like, but then also seeing like you're not putting that effort in as well. Like you have, it's a relationship. You both have to put in work for it to bloom and grow and blossom. Just like your marriage. If you're not working actively to grow and sustain your marriage, it's going to fall apart. Same thing with a friendship. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like certain military spouses, like I'm like the worst at this. I will be 100% honest. I am the worst at staying in contact with people after we move away. But I am following them on Facebook. I'm still watching them. But like, do I text them every week? No, because my life is so busy. But I know, and they know, as soon as they call me and say, hey, I need this, I am there for them. And I think that's like where, you know, that connection and that like harmony and the growth that we've done throughout that time frame is perfect. And we just start right where we left off. But it does continue to grow. Like, you know, I'm still commenting and things like that. So I think as long as they see you show up in their life in some form or another, you're still growing as a like partner in a relationship. And so you have to just put yourself out there and then put in the work as well.
Yeah. One of the most valuable experiences I've had that really sort of brought it home to me was you have to be able to empathize, right, with the people around you. So back in 2018, my husband was assigned to Germany to stand up a brigade. So when we got there, it was him, brigade party of one, and his driver, me, and our two kids. And so, there was no building, there were no staff, there was no structure. And so building it from the ground up gives you the benefit of not having to unscrew the things that have gone before you, but also you can get buy-in from every new person that comes on board. And so we had this fantastic Wednesday welcome meeting. I partnered us with the USO, big shout out to the USO in Graf, really quickly. And they let us come meet at their space on a Wednesday morning. And so before they opened, I would have new spouses come and they could bring their kids because the USO's got a play area there. There was coffee. It was a short walk up from the lodge. And they would meet spouses that were already on the ground. Now, those spouses had probably been on the ground for about a month or two longer than the brand new spouses because we were growing so quickly. So everybody knew exactly what it felt like. Everybody knew what it like to get there with nothing, to stay in the lodge for a month, to not have a car, to not have a house, to have to, dentist, doctor, hairdressers, be in a different country, learn a different language, shop on the economy. And so the level of support for new spouses was incredible. And so we buddied people up. Oh, you're moving to this area? Go talk to that person. You've got 3 kids, no car? Here, we'll walk you down to the ice cream shop on the other side of the gate. But it was a lot easier because it was fresh, right? It was fresh in everybody's mind, what it felt like to go through that. And so that's what we were able to do, was to grow that community and then stand up all the battery level SFRGs, the battalion level SFRGs, and the buy-in was incredible from those spouses and families, because one of the goals obviously was to be mission ready on my husband's side. But for me, it was to have the brigade grow organically like a family, where if somebody needed help, because nobody's coming to watch your kid when you've got to take the toddler to the doctors. So it was, hey, come up the hill, bring your kiddos. I've got a sling. We've got a fenced yard, and I've got 2 kids that will play with your babies. Bring the other 2, take the little one to the doctors. And it was like being neighbors with as many people in the unit as you could possibly be. And that obviously that's not everybody's situation. That's not what happens for a lot of people. But as a community and as a unit, we were able to build that with the buy-in of each spouse that came along. So they were modeled immediately. This is what buy-in looks like. If you want to get this out of this, you need to put this into this. And so it really did. It became partnerships all the way around.
Yeah, I wish units did more of that. I wish units did, like, hey, this is a brand new military family, have a welcome packet, have a, hey, welcome to the unit, whatever the case may be. And that's just doesn't happen, unfortunately, anymore. I mean, thankfully now we have like the grand scheme of social media, and there's a great platform for spouses to kind of go get like information. But at the same time, then you have just some negative Nancy's who go in and just be like, why are you asking this question? Things like that. So it's disheartening to see that that's the case. But again, don't let those negative people ruin your experience to have that military community. And once you're in that position to be able to do those things. Don't let anyone say, well, that's dumb. Like, no one did that for me. Yeah. Do them. I mean, I always tried, when my husband was a first sergeant prior to us doing the ROTC and stuff like this, always tried to like send a message saying like, hey, welcome. If you need me, here's my number. If you have questions, feel free to let me know. Because I know how profound that was as a military spouse for someone to do that to me. I didn't have that. So I felt so disconnected. And even though I grew up military, knowing the lifestyle, it's so drastic being a dependent as a child to a spouse. Yeah. So like, I had questions and like, how does this operate and work? And so I was having to ask like my parents. And of course, like, I feel like, again, we bond over our trauma, but we also block out a lot. So they're like, I don't remember anything like that. And I'm like, well, that's not helpful whatsoever. So just, be the person, again, you wish you had when you first joined or when you first became into the unit, or even if you're a baby spouse. Like, I call you guys baby spouses. You're not babies, you're grown women, or grown men, but come in with the mindset of being who you need and learning as you go, and then being that person for somebody else. I mean, we see it in Deployed Love. We have new military spouses within our ranks, and you would never know that they had only been a spouse in the military community for 4 months because of how much they genuinely put into the programs and provide support for other military spouses because they know that that's what's needed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just the golden rule, right? Treat others like you would like to be treated. But also I think so, we talk a lot about the new needs of the younger spouses, but in my experience as a seasoned spouse, we have to also remember to meet other spouses where they are and not come at it with our own level of experience. The tempo looks very different now than it did 10 years ago. The things that I went through as a young spouse or a younger spouse are not the same issues that young spouses now are going through. And just because our experiences aren't the same, it doesn't mean that your body and your nervous system isn't storing trauma and stress the same way. So if you can sort of break it down to, I know that's stressful, or I know that that's difficult, not why, what makes you think that is difficult? That's not my experience. It doesn't matter whether it's your experience or not. The other person is still going through that. And so, being able to show up with curiosity to really listen to see what the other person is going through goes a long way to being supportive.
And that's kind of a good transition to what we were going to talk about next, was like staying grounded during those stressful seasons. Yeah. Like, yes, community can take you a long ways, and finding that person that is able to kind of relate to what you're dealing with is definitely massive in helping yourself stay out of the stress cycle of all of everything that military brings us, right? But you have definitely a lot of experience on how to like encourage people and get through being grounded in this lifestyle. So what would be something that, like, what are some practices that you found that work really well during stressful seasons?
So, and not just for stressful seasons, but just military life in general, is try and preserve your own identity. And it's hard when you turn up to a new place and you don't know anybody. But even if that's, if you're a bookish girl, be in a bookie community, or if you love to craft, keep hold of those things, the things that really spark joy. Even in small moments, just a little bit of that each day, each week can really help get you through those dark times. Get outside. And, I'm sure you remember being in Europe. It's not always easy. The weather's not always quite so fabulous. But being outside, it allows your nervous system to reset. And then having, that one person who's your battle buddy, but not necessarily in the same unit. Yeah. You don't always want to have a confidant that is right there with you going through the same things. I mean, if you can relate to the concept, but not necessarily the detail, I think sometimes that's better because you're not both in it and you can support each other through different things and different times. And also, sometimes it helps to be able to talk about, we have this person, or I know of this situation, when, if it was somebody in the unit, somebody close to you, it's really hard to keep details private. So having someone that's on the outside of your own specific situation really can be a sanity saver.
I think it's great too, because like, while it is fun to have, like, during a deployment, have someone that you switch off doing dinners or things like that, it's really nice to be like, my husband's gone, can you take the kids? And not feel like you're overloading your friend who also doesn't have their husband. You have that community. And then when their husband's gone, you'll be like, hey, can I take your kids? I know that you need it. An hour to take a bath where nobody's knocking on the door. Like something that simple makes such a huge difference during, especially high stakes deployments.
Yeah. And I know it's not always easy finding a purpose, especially, when you're solo parenting and things are harder than normal. But even if it's just, helping somebody else out with something in whatever capacity you have, that just feels so nourishing to me anyway, to be able to just, come out of your own circle for a minute and serve somebody else. And whether that's volunteering on a regular basis, or just, if writing resumes is your thing, help a friend with a resume, or just listen to a friend's podcast and help them go through their notes. Just anything to be able to connect with another person during times of isolation and stress, I think really helps.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one as well, because I mean, I feel like that's, again, if you talk to any of our volunteers, any of us here, I mean, that is how we have kind of gone through those traumatic experiences and those long days, rapid deployments, multiple moves. I mean, Sabrina moved 3 times last year. You know, I've gone through multiple rapid deployments, different transitions. Our coordinators are all the same. And, you know, every single one of them needed to find a purpose and needed to find some type of identity, whether they couldn't work because they have young kids and couldn't afford childcare. And so they're volunteering for our community to provide something for other people, but also to get something for themselves. Like, you know, making sure it's worthwhile, your experience and what you're doing can make your journey so much more bearable. Like, you know, again, military life is short. It's not, I mean, in the long scheme of things, like you think about 20 years is a long time, 30 years is a long time. But at the end of the day, there's still so much life after those 20, 30 years that times for you to do other things. So, but like, don't put things on hold at the same time. Like, make sure that you are building up to that. So if you know that you are wanting to join the workforce afterwards, volunteering is a great way to build that resume, to build up that, like, you know, I wasn't just a stay-at-home spouse. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that as well. But like, you know, taking those opportunities to grow and learn and be at service for someone else is so important.
And can volunteering is something that helps you build your community without feeling like you're starting over from something fresh, because there's this like backbone to the structure of whatever organization that you choose to volunteer for, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do play dates. But instead of just putting out, I'm doing play dates, you're like, with Deployed Love. Deployed Love is an organization that we have funding, we have all these things. So it's not just a play date. We're here and there's a bunch of people across the nation also meeting, and it just feels like a little bit easier step for people. So if you're looking to build that community in your community, find an organization that already exists that does similar things to what you're wanting to do and just join them in volunteering, because that allows you to just be like, I already have the structure. If you need to know what Deployed Love is and you don't know who I am, here's what we are, so you can see where I'm coming from. Because I think that's a lot of it, is a lot of people are like, oh, like I want to do play dates with friends and meet new people. But if I put myself out there, they don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. How do we feel safe in that situation? Where if you find an organization, there's tons of them. Like I've heard like Fort Hood Mom Talk. There's a whole bunch of different things where you can find that organization, volunteer for them at your local installation, and you feel like you're supported from behind as well. Even if those
and you're not just doing it on your own. There. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think the beauty of that is if you have joined an organization and then you've become part of that organization, you're then able to take what you know, your experiences, your learned skills, and replicate that, right? So if you turn up at another assignment and they don't have something like that, you're like, well, okay, I didn't find it, I'm going to create it. You already have the structure, you have the support crew to reach back to in your other places. You've already got a solid plan to move forward with creating something, and then that just pays it forward every time, because now someone else is going to come along. They're going to go, I was in this other place, it was great, and they're going to take what you've shown them and build on that in a new place.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen that happen with our volunteers. They move and they're like, can we bring it with us? And we're like, absolutely. Like, let's do that and let's get it. And then their shoes are filled by somebody who they had already supported at their past installation. And it just grows and grows. And it's like this beautiful, like, if I look back and think about Deployed Love, it brings so much joy to me, because I'm like, man, there's so many coordinators and so many people who, even if they're not currently still volunteering for us, I know that they took our mission with them into their future, whatever their job is, whatever it is. And they're still supporting the military community in whatever else they're doing. And I love that so much, that the community is just this big bubble and we know it's everywhere now.
Well, having a supportive network to really sort of learn to be outside of your comfort zone is everything, right? It's so much easier to push yourself when you know you're supported by people you trust.
Absolutely.
Yep. 100% agree. So we talked a little bit about, like, you know, how to stay grounded. I think like things that you said, Portia, were so important. Like, get outside, find that person outside of your unit. which I think I 100% agree. I think that I wouldn't have survived those rapid deployments without Sabrina or Ashley, who's our volunteer director, the military spouses themselves, but they were outside of that unit and they were able to kind of be like, it's okay. Like they weren't in the thick of it where, you know, my dear friends that were inside of the unit where everyone was just going crazy. Yeah. So I think that is a very important point. And I think that's where you can find that community in those organizations and things like that. And outside, absolutely. Like going outside is so important, and exploring your location. I think we see that all the time where military spouses are like, I absolutely hate it here. But then come to find out that they haven't gone out and explored around their location, even within like 30 minutes to an hour away. Like getting out and exploring it and learning that new culture. Because we've talked about that so many times on this podcast, where like every part of the country is like a different culture and a different own little world within like a larger aspect. So learning those different things and meeting those communities and finding those different resources and those other nonprofits and all the things, like engaging and connecting, whether it's the library or ACS or MWR, if you're only staying on installation, but finding something that gets you out of the house and gets you out of that headspace of just being stuck in a place that you're not very thrilled with will make a profound difference in how your military journey will be. I will die on that hill. I think if you choose to stay inside and not make community and everything like that, your journey will be awful. But if you get out and find something, like find that local brewery that's just your spot and you go every Sunday morning, or there's a zoo that you take your kids and you get a membership and you go once a week, or whatever the case may be. Find something that makes your life a little lighter. And a lot of that has to do with exploring and getting out.
Yeah. And I will say my kids now, I mean, they have spent half of their life outside of the US, and they will bring up, Mom, do you remember that place in that little town? Yep. And I'm thinking, what? Where was that?
Yes.
You know, when we were in Germany. Like they remember the coolest things that didn't cost any money. So it's not necessarily a financial burden. But one of the things that they have done in all the places that we've lived, if they've been immersed in the culture. When we lived in Italy, the Saturday morning market was at the end of our street. So I used to have my kids order the vegetables from the market, and the guy that ran the store loved it when they would try and speak little bits of Italian. But they remember that. They remember walking down to the gelato store on the square. Yep. They remember having pastries at, at this corner cafe. It all seems food related. That must be a theme.
Related too. So that's really funny because like I remember being able to walk, like when we were stationed in Germany as a kid. I mean, I was middle school, high school, but I remember being able to walk down to the bakery and getting my little baked treat once a week. We got to get money and were able to go down there. I remember being able to ride the train for the very first time by myself as a teenager to go meet up with friends downtown. I remember all these things, and then there's things like where I'm like, did I go there? Like, I don't, like, there's a lot of things I don't remember, but I also just remember like all the experiences that I got to have, even stateside, like, when we were stationed in El Paso, going to White Sands, and how that was such a cool experience. And, being able to travel to different parts of the country because we were stationed in different parts of the country that, never would have had that experience. My kids now like talk about things that they haven't even seen because of things that we've talked about, like prior to having our kids. My husband's in Poland right now, and he was telling the kids how this location he had, they have these teeny tiny brass gnomes, like thousands of them hidden all over the country. And they're all like, they're already talking about like how they've already seen them. I'm like, you've seen 2 pictures, my friend, my loves. Like, but they're already talking about like, can we please go? Because we want to be able to go and find all those. Like, that would be so cool to be able to find as many as we can. And I think having kids as a military family, and we worry so much about like how that's affecting them. And I'll be straight up, like as a military kid, there were times I absolutely hated being a military kid. I moved a lot though. So I will like preference and say that like between my middle school and high school years, I moved a lot, like almost every single year. So like for me, it was really, really tough and I hate it in the moment, but looking back at it as an adult, I don't think I would have changed it. I don't think I would have changed that experience, because then I wouldn't have some of these people that are in my life that are still in my life 20 years later, that I've that were so profound in shaping who I am today, including my husband. I would have never met my husband if none of this happened. That, you know, everything happens for a reason. And so kind of like, you know, as, you know, when we chose to do this year on a company tour with the kids, I was like, you know, this is what we need to do as our family. Like this is going to really suck for the year, and the kids may not like it at times. I know I won't like it at times, but this is what seems to be perfect for our family right now. And in the long run, it will be what's best. So kind of have that mentality of like, you know, it may not be the most perfect place for you at the moment, but if you make it the place, and if you take that opportunity to embrace it, I promise you it'll be worth it in the long run.
Yeah, and your story as a military child like really makes me feel less bad about, because like, your story is Kira's story. Like in reality, she's coming into high school and we've moved a lot, and I can tell you now where we're at is not where we're gonna stay. So we know there's more moves coming up, and I feel bad and I feel guilty about that. But she has made, like, I look at it and you think, oh, well, you have, especially now with technology, I'm like, you have all of your phone on your phone. You have all your friends from Germany. You have all your friends from Arizona last year. You have all your friends from this installation we're at now. And when we move, those people aren't going to disappear. Like, you'll still have those connections. They're still going to be your friends. Yes, you won't meet every single Thursday and watch Stranger Things. Like, you don't have the same like bond that you have currently, but you're going to grow and you're going to have all these. And then when you get out and you're in the real world going to college, and you want to go across the country for a concert or something, you'd be like, hey, I know you're living at this installation. Like, can I come see you? And it makes life actually a little bit easier. And I try to explain that to her, because I'm like, I have friends everywhere. When we travel, we stop at my friends' houses. They may not even remember these people from when they were little, but we stop and I'm like, hey, we're going to stay at Erica's house tonight. She's going to make us pancakes in the morning. And it's fun to have that community across the country. And yes, in the moment, it is incredibly stressful. Moving all the time and starting over and making new friends is never fun for anybody. I mean, it's not fun for me as a spouse, but
and I think if you present it as not a negative thing, your kids will never view it as a negative thing. Yes, they're going to be sad, and they'll be like, can we, you know, when we first got here, they're like, can we call Miss Bethany and talk to, you know, our friends? And I was like, yeah, that's not a problem. We have FaceTime now. Like, I do think that has been, you know, a very big difference between the time I was growing up as a military kid to now. Like, you have those opportunities to FaceTime and all that kind of stuff, where we just had written letters. Like, I remember being like a pen pal with my friend and having to wait, but like, it's so cool to see like what they're doing now. Like, I'm still friends. Like, I don't have a lot of connection with anyone that I went to elementary school with, just partly because that was elementary school, whatever the case may be. But I'm still good friends with people from middle school and high school. And I get to watch all of them. Like, one of my best friends in middle school just finished all of her like schooling and internships and all you do to become like a doctor. And I've been able to cheer her on from behind the scenes, just going like, she's such an amazing person. And I remember just how profoundly our relationship was for just 1 year. 1 year is all we knew each other. But I've been able to kind of just be like, so excited for you. And like, you know, we've already talked about like, you know, next time we're in the neck of the woods of each other, we're going to meet up. And getting to meet up with people around the world as you come and see them is so fun. Like, as a military kid, getting to run into people. I mean, I've run into people. I went to school in the middle of Alaska, guys, in the middle of Belgium. Like, it is so cool to be able to just be like, I know someone there. Like, we're talking about going on a hop to see Jeremy here in May, and I'm like, okay, I know this person's in Germany, this person's this place in Germany, this person's in England, this person's here. And knowing that, okay, no matter where I go, if something happens, I know somebody that would be willing to be like, hey, just come stay the night, or hey, let me find someone close to you that can pick you up, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's a super cool thing about the military community. I think as you present it to your kids, like my kids are like, yes, let's move. Like, they're so excited. They weren't very like, oh man, like we have to move again. Like they're almost like, is it time for us to move again? Is it time for us to go on this new adventure? And I think that is
the favorite thing that Darren says. He goes, I love the feeling when we move into a new house and we don't know what it's going to look like. That is so cute. Like, he loves the decorating and putting the things in and making it feel like home is like one of his favorite things.
That's the one thing I've messed up, is I kind of like, my kids now have it in their brain that every time we move, they get to redecorate their room. And I'm like, wait a minute. wait a minute. That's not the case. That's not the case, guys. It's happened in the past, but that's not going to be the case every single time. And so now they're like, okay, so when we move in our next house, I want my room to look like this. And I was like, listen, y'all, we're not redecorating the room every single time we move, but it's a conversation we'll have when that happens. But I think it's how you present it. And I think that your viewpoint is.
So neither of my kids have spent more than 2 years in any school they've ever been to. And up until moving back here, they had never been to a school that wasn't a Dodia school or a Dodds school, which moving, if you know, it's a huge shift. But they are still in contact with their friends from my high school senior, more so than my freshman, from both Belgium and Germany. And we have friends from when we were here before. And my senior is planning to take a trip back to Germany to hang out with his friends from high school as they graduate, and then just before he graduates. And the whole conversation of, well, who else do we still know there? So if anything goes wrong, if you need help, there's this person, there's this person, there's this person. And, just even them having the awareness that wherever we go, it's likely that there'll be somebody we know or a second or third degree removed friend, right? I mean, the spouse network is solid. When you say, oh, I'm moving to this person, I can guarantee one of your friends is going to go, oh, wait a minute. I've got a friend there. Let me put you in touch. And so when we moved back here to Bragg, friends of ours were going to Wiesbaden. We were coming back here. So I left all of my plants there for her. So she picked all of those up. We had an overlap, like we lent them one of our cars because we were in the process of packing up to move back here. And we borrowed their car that had stayed stateside when we got back here. So you don't even have to be in the same place to help your friends from different assignments. Sometimes, help and support shows up in the weirdest ways. But I think our kids, that, they've grown up to accept that their network isn't just the people that live in their house with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we talk about like community and all that. It's so important. Like, let's transition over to
AWAG
and and let us know how that is impactful and how that is part of the community that you can chat more about.
I'll tell you a little bit about my AWAG journey. So I had wanted to attend an AWAG seminar from the time we got to Germany. Couldn't do it because of my husband's job, then COVID, then it was virtual. And then the year it came back up on the net, I applied and got a scholarship for an attendee scholarship. So that was in June of 22. I went to the annual seminar with a scholarship. By October of 22, I'd moved from Belgium to Wiesbaden and was asked to help plan and facilitate the local meeting in Wiesbaden. At that meeting, I met the then program chair who was moving back to the States, called me a couple of days later and said, hey, I know this is completely left field. How would you feel about being the program chair? I mean, this is the first time I'd ever thought about it. And then by the November of that year, I was the program chair for the next seminar in April of 23. Had never done anything like it before. Apparently somebody saw something in me and thought, I think she's more than capable. She's motivated. Let's go. One of the most fantastic volunteer experiences, unexpected volunteer experiences, something I never signed up for to start with. And I'm still friends with the ladies from that community now. And just recently, this year, I was able to help them with the planning committee for their virtual seminar that's going to be launching here in January. So that's a little bit about...
For those of you who don't know what AWAG is, it's American Workers Across the Globe. And so have you explain a little bit more about what AWAG does for the military spouses, especially when you're overseas?
Sure. So AWAG is an organization. It's a nonprofit organization, so fully funded by sponsors, and then the program fee. So when you go to attend the program in Garmisch, beautiful Garmisch in Germany, you pay a certain fee. So that's how the program is funded. All of the people that run AWAG are volunteers, and it's the in-person program is in Germany. So there's people from all over Europe. We also have satellite meetings throughout the year in different countries in Europe. It started back in 1946 with a group of women who were providing aid to the families in post-war Germany. And then by 1956, AWAG had been formed to provide a meeting space and support for those wives, because it was all wives then. This year is our 70th anniversary, and we have had an in-person meeting for 70 years. The mission that was coined in 2000, Train, Strengthen, Connect, it's still deeply relevant now. And so we provide personal and professional training for military, veteran, active duty, military adjacent, anybody with an ID card in person in Europe. There are amazing opportunities for connection. Every year there's an annual seminar which spans 4 days, and it's fantastic. We call it the AWAG bubble. Anybody that has been there will know that it is just an amazing event full of lots of seminar sessions, lots of workshops, some very deep and impactful keynote speakers. But you can learn leadership skills, practical skills like learning the Google Suite or learning to use LinkedIn, public speaking. But then there's also sessions about, empowerment and boundary setting. So there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And the relationships that are forged, not just for the board members, but for attendees, they last such a long time. People really do connect with those people that they meet at the seminar, and then just take those relationships across oceans and decades.
Yeah, I love what they do. And I think because if you've ever lived overseas, you would know that there is definitely an epidemic of military spouses not having jobs. Unemployment is, that's probably one of the worst places to be a military spouse if you want to have a career. It's just not sustainable. That is partially because working for like overseas, like in Germany, you can't really work for the Germans very easily. You have to have a C1 level German. You have to have your card in order to be a worker and things like this. There's a huge process. There's a lot of spouses who create their own businesses, which sometimes works. Sometimes you don't get the approval in time. It's definitely, there's a lot of hindrance on professional spouses trying to continue their careers. So AWAG is there to support those spouses in their what they're trying to do as they follow their husband's career around.
Yeah, and the SOFA agreement, or the agreement that the host country has with the American government, is different in every place. So in Belgium, there's no SOFA agreement at all, so you can't work. In Italy, it's different from Germany. So it really does depend on where you are and what support is local to you at the base. But being able to just keep up with your skills, or not, for many of us, it's not even going forward. It's not backsliding. It's staying current with, updates in our field. It's staying current with technology updates, or it's just staying connected with a greater community than you have at your installation.
Yeah, and that's what's great about it, is it supports the leadership skills. It's the same with what we were talking about. If you are in a location like this where you can't work, you can't bring in an income for whatever reason, there's a lot of TESA, there's a lot of things as to why you can't work specifically in locations overseas, but you can volunteer. You can volunteer for AWAG. You can volunteer. I mean, even deployed level, I volunteered continuously while we were there, just because it still gave me that I'm working feeling. Yeah. And so those are opportunities where you can keep your skills up. Like you were saying, I think it's amazing. As we bring in and train a lot of volunteers, I would have loved for them to have some of these skills that you're talking about when they come in, so that we don't have to train them in them. So it is really, really cool to be able to get to other like-minded spouses, especially at these in-person conferences that you're talking about, that they are also trying to advance in their own career. Because you talked about identity, and it is really hard when you're overseas to continue your own identity as a spouse, I think, because you really are just a military spouse when you're overseas, because you really don't have other options of community outside of base. You can get involved with the locals as much as possible, but if you've ever lived there, you know that they still consider you an outsider. You are still a tourist. You are still an American. You don't fully fit into the framework of any of those other communities. And I think having an identity, especially with something like AWAG, where you still feel like a professional, you still feel like you're advancing your skills, you're still being part of what you were prior to the being stationed overseas, is really, really important.
Yeah, and up until now, you really had to be in Europe to experience that. But on January the 22nd, there will be a virtual seminar, so anybody can dial in. It's a great way to reconnect if you've already been in the AWAG bubble, but there are going to be some of our favorite guest speakers are going to be there. Speakers that people absolutely raved about are going to volunteer their time to do sessions. We also have some prior board members that have been involved with AWAG for decades. So it's a great way to sort of have an introduction to AWAG and then really, seek them out. If you think you're going to be in Europe, come to an AWAG seminar, come to one of the regional ones, and then, spend the money. Or if you're a volunteer with one of the spouses clubs, because our spouses clubs in Europe do send a lot of attendees, then, come that way. But it really is a valuable way to stay connected to a greater community. Yeah, obviously I feel strongly about it because I'm volunteering with them from overseas right now.
Well, and I think especially if you're going to be overseas and you don't have those opportunities to work and things like that, it's a perfect opportunity to use the resources that are out there to grow and to learn. I mean, you have AWAG, you have MSAN, you have Military One Source, and all these different programs that you can do courses for free. There's several scholarships. I mean, we've talked to, like, the Fisher House has scholarships. There's several programs out there that have scholarships specifically for military spouses to go back to school to learn. So that way, when they are out of this chapter of their life where they can't work or they're ready to work, they are set up with all of these skills. And, we've talked about this so many times. Like, military spouses are some of the most hardworking individuals in the workforce. Like, I mean, yes, it's really hard to get in the door because, when you're looking at the resumes, our resumes look like we just copied and pasted. At least mine does. But, it's one of those things where there are people out there who want to hire military spouses because they know that their work ethic and they know that the skills that they're coming in with and how they can handle emergencies and things like that is so different compared to our civilian counterparts that, if you're in that transition of, or if you're in that period of where you physically can't work because you have kids or you can't because you're located overseas, take that time to utilize all of these amazing programs. And if you don't know what they are, listen to our podcast because we have episodes on so many amazing organizations, and we're still learning, we're still growing, and we're still finding these out for ourselves. I mean, we're all veteran spouses here, and I feel like we all are learning about new programs on a daily. And so there are things out there that we still don't know about, but there are things out there that we do know about and that they are credited. I will MSAN. If you're looking to be in a leadership role, go do those courses.
Absolutely.
Use your MyCAA. Like, I'm literally trying to figure out how I can use it because they changed I still qualify for it. I used to not qualify it for it because it went up to a certain pay grade, but they've expanded that. And so now that I qualify for it again, I'm like, well, what can I use that for? Like, what can I use to grow and do more? And I didn't utilize it as a young baby spouse. And it's one of the things I regretted. Like, use the things that are at your disposal, guys. Even if you don't use it for anything, you at least grew and learned something, and you can show that, hey, I did this in the midst of a deployment, and you can just be proud of yourself.
Well, and now, with AI, there's so many searches that you can do that will tell you about available resources, scholarships, funding, and then learning institutions for different levels. So wherever you are on your path, there is something for you. I mean, I know, going back to MSAN, it's been incredible to really develop skills with them. So you start off, with maybe the emerging leadership course, and then the leadership development course, and then the ethical leadership course. So you really can just keep going with it, but you have to look for it. It's not going to be the easiest thing to find all the time. But again, ask ChatGPT,
Yeah.
ask Gemini, that we have incredible resources at our fingertips. So I'll give a quick plug for one of our Notre Dame cohort pals. So Andrea Singsas is actually going to be speaking at the virtual seminar, and she's doing a session that is translating your volunteer experience on your resume to the real world, which I know is something that so many of us struggle with, is, taking those chunks of time where we haven't worked and really making it look appealing to prospective employers, because we do have a very certain and specific set of skills. We have managed homes, we've managed organizations, we've managed volunteer teams, we've, gone to all kinds of different lengths to stay sane through crazy situations. And I think there's so much to offer to employees if they could just look beyond what they see as gaps. And Andrea's going to be talking us through that on the
Andrea
22nd.
Is great. I would definitely suggest, if you are going to listen to any of those, listen to that one, because she does have some amazing insight on the topics, and she's an amazing speaker as well. So I would be very looking forward to that one as well. And it's one of those things where you just have to put yourself out there. Again, I feel like that's all you're going to say is just put yourself out there and kind of just take that leap of attending an AWAG seminar or going to a Mill Spouse Fest that's local to you. There's several coming up. They're, just taking that risk of saying, like, how can I get involved to make my life better, but as well as the life of those around me going forward. So I just feel like I'm such an advocate for spouses to be volunteers, because it is a great opportunity for you to build that resume, and then having those, like, okay, well, how can this transition over afterwards? Like, there's a lot more that can go onto that resume than you would think, especially for like our volunteers. Like, they're building communities, they're planning events, they're doing financials, they're doing all these networking and all these different things. Like, these are skills that companies are looking for. And I hope that you guys, at least one thing you take away from this podcast today, is that it may be terrifying, but go, just take the leap. And worst case scenario, I feel like there is no worst case scenario. Like, you either going to find someone who is going to be like, yes, let's do this together. You're building a community. You find a community. It may be slow building. Like, we talk about that all the time with our coordinators. Like, hey, just because someone doesn't show up to this first, second, or third event, keep going, because eventually you're going to have 10 to 20 families who are showing up on a daily, and it's going to make such a difference for not just you, but for them as well. And I love that you guys are doing that virtual event. I think that's really great. I think that first off, I just love that they are doing this event in Europe, because there's so many great events that are happening stateside that, we have spouses who have the opportunity to go to these events stateside, but not necessarily overseas. So that's great that that's already in place for our spouses over there. I'm very excited that's a virtual event, though. I think that's a great way to kind of introduce spouses to it, and then when they go, if they happen to go Oconus, they have that, I can actually go to this in person this upcoming year.
Getting to really sort of get a taste of the magic virtually, and just see the energy that we share as an organization. It's pretty cool. But I think if you do get to Europe and you're looking for community, there are so many great organizations. AWAG's just one of them, but AWAG puts on in-person events in your, I won't say necessarily in your town, but Stuttgart, Ramstein, we've got Belgium, we had one in Spain, Italy, the UK, Bavaria, Rhineland Falls. So there are lots of areas that are only a relatively short drive to get to. And, these events are put on by military spouses. They know what you're going through. They get it. And they really want to help you grow and expand your community and expand your knowledge and skills, because that's what they want for themselves ultimately.
Yeah. So in short, my friends, go to these events that are happening.
For sure.
Utilize the programs that are out there, the events, because again, these spouses are here to provide support and love for you guys. Like that, that's all they want. They're not there to get a pat on the back or anything like that. They genuinely want to make sure that you are set up for success. And I think that's a great way to kind of spearhead into our next prompt is like, you know, we as spouses, we want to be seen and heard. We want to know that like our sacrifices are worth it and things like that. What is a tip that you can give us, Portia, for spouses who are feeling unseen or exhausted today?
Ooh, God, that's a great question. Okay, I take it in small bites. I would take a look at the things that are really draining you and tackle them one at a time. You don't have to solve everything today, and you don't have to solve it alone. You know, we're not meant to do this alone. There's a lot of weight to it takes a village, and whether your village is spread out across continents or it's all on your street. You know, community doesn't remove the stress of this life, but it doesn't make it survivable. And if you can show up the same way that you want others to show up for you, you're already winning because you've got empathy, you've got motivation, and, you know, you've got community and connection.
I love that. Well, Portia, we want to really thank you for coming on. I know that it takes a lot to also support your community by bringing resources to others and sharing your experiences within them. So we appreciate you telling us a little bit about AWAG and your story as a military spouse.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you both so much.
If you are listening, make sure you check the show notes. The AWAG virtual conference that we were talking about will be in the show notes. The information, it is on January 22nd, so it should be about a week from when this episode comes out, so you should be able to still get connected, still get in and listen to what all these great speakers are going to be talking about. And we just want to remind you that no matter where you are in your military life today, that you're not alone, you're seen. There is a whole community out here that wants to just cheer for you and support you through everything. And we hope that you enjoy all the resources that we bring to you guys. So as we like to say, Ruck up, Buttercup.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.